Welcome to another video. Let me light this up. Let's get started, shall we? This is like my third time trying to record it because my alarms keep getting in the way, but hopefully this is the last. Something I wanted to talk about, and that is internal versus external circumstances, okay? And a lot of us that are on self-improvement, you might relate to this. You feel like nothing's getting better. You feel like you've been on this journey for a while now and you're trying to look for the results, the outcome, right? But nothing's happening. For example, the guy who goes to the gym wants that six-pack. And he works towards it, but he's just not getting there for some reason, even though he's working out. So could it be the approach that's wrong or what? Because I don't know. And this is something, let's be real honest here. This is more of a discussion. I'm not here to give you an answer and pretend like I know, because I've implemented a lot of what these self-improvement YouTubers talk about, but sometimes it feels like it's almost black-pilled. It feels as if I don't like devolving my mind into that state where I feel as if though, all of our outcomes are predetermined by things we can't control, but sometimes it really does feel like that, doesn't it? It feels like no matter how hard you try, no matter how good of a physique you get, no matter how much you focus on your looks, your mindset, let's say, sometimes it just seems like you cannot get the results you want. And when it comes to life, let's be honest, a lot of us are looking for same results or similar results. Our goals aren't very different. And that is, let's just be real honest, right? A lot of us don't want to end up alone. Especially for the men out there. We want to find someone who loves us, man. Let's keep it real, right? At the end of the day, we could care less as long as we find this person. As long as, we can be with them in the end. It's like that sliver of hope that kind of just keeps us going. And when in the toughest of times, that's what gets us going. And maybe that's perhaps unpopular to say, because on social media, it's all about now improving yourself, focusing on yourself, But let's be honest, that's a lot of the reason why we do it. Perhaps you don't, but definitely is a reason I do. I mean, you read my bio on my channel and it says, wanting to become a future father. But sometimes I think what happens is we tend to focus too much on the external, and I think I'm realizing that now. I don't think that's a bad thing. Perhaps my past self would have told you to do that. But the truth is, you really do have to work on your mind as well, and it's not as just simple as meditating every day. Although that is a big part of what can help and has helped me. Sometimes I'd like to think that all of my past problems are behind me, but that's just not the case. Some things I've gotten over, I just don't want them to come back, but sometimes they do, and I'm like, I thought I was better than this, and then I'm like, well, I guess not. And that's what sucks, is the fact that they come back, these problems. Like, for example, loneliness is a big one for me. They come back and I was like, I thought I dealt with this. And now it's just one more time where I thought I dealt with it, that it now comes back, and it's like, well, it just feels even a little bit more hopeless now. So I completely get it. But what drives me is like, just that hope, like that, the slightest bit of hope, even if it's just a little bit, like a speck of it. That's what drives me, knowing that it is possible if I give it my best. But sometimes there are certain things that are out of my control that I cannot take responsibility for, and I need to learn that, because hustle culture taught me that I'm responsible for everything in my life, and I see how that can be very, very helpful. I see how that's very helpful, right? Because if you take responsibility for most things in your life, then it means that, well, you can have such attitude where you're the one changing everything possible, where you're the one taking the action to change everything in your life. But that's just not the case in reality. By truth, that's not the case. Some things are legitimately out of your control, and you're going to lose your mental health and thinking that you have any control over them. A weather, like for example, the weather is an obvious one. One that is less obvious is perhaps what people think of us. And perhaps that's obvious in the moment right now while you're listening to this, but recall any moment that you've tried to talk to someone that you had feelings for, right? It's not easy. You have to be consciously aware of it in that moment. And I know like this video is going to be a rant style video, I'm going to be honest. It's just going to go from place to place. It's not going to be like my usual videos, although those aren't particularly, I would say, orderly as well. But yeah, again, I feel as though sometimes the main point I'm trying to make in this video is, if I've digressed too far, I apologize, but the main point I'm trying to make is that sometimes we focus heavily upon external factors, like our looks and things of that nature, and our style, and we think that those are the things that are wrong. And when they're wrong, we try other people's style. We try things that we don't want to do. We do what Andrew's doing. We do what Hamza's doing. We do what Iman is doing. We do what all these other people that we perceive as, you know, people that have helped us, which is perfectly fine. But like, to try taking everything of theirs and to try implementing into yours, it's just not who you are. And I tried that. I did that too. That wasn't who I was. You know, I'm me, and I was sometimes afraid to be me. Like, for example, sometimes I'm afraid to wear rings, right? Because I'm like, oh, it might come off as feminine, or wear off the catcher that I have for my hair to keep it up, and have the longer hair that I do comes off as feminine. But that's just a reflection of how I feel about myself sometimes. Because if I really think about it, other people can't really, like, even if they say something, if I let it get to me is what really, you know, what really determines how I feel about myself and what I filter in. But if I feel that way about myself, of course, every person I look at, I'm going to think that they're thinking that about me. And it's really hard to be that, right? Because sometimes, I like to think about it like this, right? This is really hard to articulate, but you almost have to think that you're like the original, right? Because let's take Hamza, for example. He wore a bathrobe and he does videos, right? He's like, I don't want to say the first person to ever do that, but someone that just embodied that, knowing that some people would say stuff about him, but he still chose to do that and went about doing that and kept doing that. You know, like, you have to almost become so confident, and I'm not saying you have to become arrogant and think that like you're the one, you're that guy, but you have to become really, really confident in your own skin. And something that's really helping me do that is thinking about my future self and the kind of person I want to be, like my future self is. Because if my future self is that person and I'm working up to him, then I know that nothing anyone says is really getting under my skin. That's how I like to think about it sometimes. But again, I know I'm digressing left and right, and this video is probably not making a lot of sense, but, you know, I think we need to learn to focus more upon the mental side of things. Sometimes on the internet, we're gaslighted by all these gurus and these so-called masculine men that talk about, the mind just being the figment of imagination, and there's nothing to take care of when it comes to that. It's just, oh, just think this way. It's so easy. To some, it comes naturally. And perhaps it, serves you to believe that it might come to you so naturally to believe to have the belief sets that they do. But in my experience, some of them were almost just a complete and utter, how do you say this? They were a way to hide my mental problems rather than addressing them. I overlooked them completely by saying they didn't exist. And now I'm taking part in healthier communities who are helping me look through that. I would go so far as to say I would consider therapy an option, to be completely 100%. And I know that sounds like an unpopular opinion, but just being honest, I think it will really, really help, especially as a psych major. Like, think about it. I'm a psych major and I'm going so far as to think that, like, I'm being convinced that therapy would perhaps not be a good option for me. I'm just saying, like, watch what you see on the internet sometimes, because these people's word is not necessarily law. We focus so much on our physical the aspects of ourselves, and we've gotten so good at it. But the problem becomes that we continue to insist that something external is always the problem as to why we aren't getting the results, that why we're still lonely, why we can't be around friends, why we can't be around certain groups of people. But it's all the mental game, and it's way more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's more complicated than the simple-minded statements that these gurus have online. That's all I want to say. And that's what I'm realizing for myself personally. But if that's not the case for you and it's easy and they've helped you in the mindset game, so be it. Perhaps you think I'm soft for that. Perfectly fine. You have the right to your opinion. Perhaps you don't. Perhaps you've experienced something similar to I have, right? That you keep working on your external circumstances and you're just wondering, like, when does it get better? When does it get better? When does it get better? And you're trying and you're trying and you're trying, and it just seems like nothing's fucking working at all. You're like, how long am I going to keep doing this? And again, I think it's a matter of working on your mental health as well. And I talk about journaling sometimes, but I feel like I need to take my journaling to another level, because it's not just about writing down just how I feel and stuff like that. Now that I'll agree to. It's like, keep writing down about feelings, and I don't feel like you'll necessarily get anywhere, although sometimes I think it's helpful. But I do think that it's helpful to possibly write about, and I'm gonna try this first, see how it goes, but cognitively reframing your mind so that when you go through any negative experience, like some sort of, like, I know something I deal with is rejection sensitivity, very hardcore. Ever since I grew up, everything always in my household felt like it was, my fault kind of thing. So I had a great degree of rejection sensitivity, and that applies. People usually think that just means when it comes to approaching, the opposite sex or whatnot, but that's not necessarily the case. You have rejection sensitivity to the most minuscule things, like if there's a neutral stimulus, such as someone doesn't text you, you'll think it's a rejection. It's ridiculous. It's that bad. And so I want to be able to work on my mind more and cognitively reframe it through journaling, because I feel like even though I've gotten where I've wanted to physically and I'm working up to it and it's become very, very easier, business-wise, I'm getting better, although I have my stumbling blocks there as well. I'm getting better in every aspect in the physical realm. It's just the mental realm. I feel like I've stagnated for so long, and I feel like I come back right to where I always was. That's why I think we need more focus on the mental health side of things. Not necessarily just taking care of your mental health, but also reframing your mind, because I think there's a difference between having good mental health, but it's so hard to sustain that good mental health, even if you do the practices that you do, if your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs about the world around you are just, well, garbage and don't serve you. They're so negative, they're so toxic, and sometimes they're developed from, the internet. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but I'm gonna try some sort of CBT journaling that I'm trying to learn from, one of my inspirations, Dr. Alec, from one of his videos, and I'm gonna see how that goes, and I'll let y'all know how that goes. But I completely understand. Sometimes we're just working on ourselves so much so that, we're just like, when I'm getting tired of this. Like, when do I stop? When do I get the results? But I think it's just a mental game as well. Like, we have to be able to fix um, or be able to help our mental health a lot more as well. So, but I get it. That's still a problem, right? You think, okay, like, when am I going to see the results I want? When am I not going to feel this great degree of loneliness? I'm working on myself and everything, but when is that going to stop? And I think all of us have a bad expectation of what it looks like to work on yourselves and expect results. It's like this, right? Imagine, and this was an analogy that Dr. Orlick used, and I love it. It was like, imagine if you were told you'll get a job if you go to college, but you never were told the timeline for how long college lasts. So you're in college for a year and you're like, where's my job? Because you don't know how long it lasts. So you're like expecting a job, but you're in it for a year, and then you're in it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's just like that, right? We don't know the timeline for how long it takes for us to, like, we know how to improve ourselves, but we don't know the timeline for how long it takes for some of these effects to feel like they come to play. And I know a part of you is going to be like, wow, so it actually takes like a decent amount of time, like years perhaps. Like, I'm talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, it takes that long, and that, you know, there's a hint of nihilism in that, or pessimism, where it's like, damn, like, I don't even know if I want to do it for that long. I don't know if I'll last that long. Because let's be honest, we've all had those thoughts for like, and I don't know what it is, but that slight bit of hope keeps you going. You're like, I don't know if I can keep going. I really don't know. I know what that's like. I remember spending countless hours, days on end, back to back, where I would spend right there, right to my right, that bathroom right there. I would sit down in the shower, just turn down the lights, turn them all off, and have my shower on just full heat, and just sit there and be like, when is it gonna stop? When am I not gonna feel this no more? I remember drinking tea all the time because I didn't want it to hurt so bad no more. I remember, so trust me, I understand. I understand. But yeah, it takes time, and you can work on the external and keep working on it. That's not a bad thing, but you also have to. This is why I preach about God all the time. I'm like, even though I'm really bad at it and I'm still learning, I'm starting to do good with it. But we also have to not only take care of our mental health, but really change the beliefs that we have about ourselves around the world. Because as soon as we get hit with those negative experiences that none of us wanted to go through, and we go through them again, it takes a huge toll on our mental health immediately. I don't care what experience it is for you. Perhaps it's some sort of PTSD, some sort of trauma, some sort of interaction, social anxiety, rejection sensitivity approaching someone. I don't care what it is, address it. Don't overlook it just because these girls think it doesn't exist. Mental health doesn't exist. I understand that that belief works for some people because you view it as oh, it doesn't serve me to think that I can't be depressed. It doesn't serve me, and I get it, and I've tried that sometimes, but sometimes for some, different strokes for different folks. So if that isn't working for you, stop trying to delude yourself into believing that. It's like, how about you admit where you're at, meet yourself where you're at, and then it's like, okay. And what does that mean? Like, I'm not just saying fancy words. It's like, really admit to yourself, like, what is it that you're struggling with, and then how do I change these beliefs about myself? How do I actually go about doing that? And I think a helpful resource for that is Dr. Alec, or Dr. K of Healthy Gamer. He was really, really good. So I highly recommend him. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. If you got nothing that I like explained within that talk, then just keep this in mind. Keep sustaining, those keep bettering your external circumstances, whether it's that business, whether it's that, looks maxing, whatever it is. Keep doing that, keep it up, but try to start prioritizing your mental health a little bit more, not just the maintenance of it in terms of meditating and stuff, but in terms of actually really trying to question the beliefs. And I know this is hard. I'm not a master at this, nor have I learned like all the techniques in the world to be able to do this. That's why I'm saying I want to do it, and then I'll let y'all know how it goes. I'm just being honest. I don't know everything in the world. I'm gonna try it, see how it goes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So y'all take it easy now, all right? Let me know if there's something that y'all would like me to talk about, and we can talk about it for sure. So that's all I got for you. Take it easy. Peace.